In 1992, the Sega Genesis received a brand new original chapter in the Splatterhouse series. And with it, we got graphics that gave the arcade a run for its money, some of the best music on the Genesis, more gore, a longer adventure, and an actual attempt at some story. Splatterhouse 2 represents everything a sequel should be, and really what the TurboGrafx 1 should have been. Of the three, Part 2 is my favorite. I'd say Splatterhouse 2 is a lot like Evil Dead 2, and by that I mean it's both a sequel and a remake. I mean, the box itself says, "It begins again." It took everything that was great about Part 1 and improved upon it. The same simplified 2D gameplay is still here, but now there's more emphasis on platforming elements and a little more variety in your enemies. The controls are as tight as ever, and combat this simple never felt so awesome. Seriously, hitting stuff with long blunt objects has never been more fun. Oh, and there's a chainsaw in this one too. The setting is 3 months after the first one, but the mask has convinced Rick to come back to the house and save Jennifer. But you killed Jennifer in Part 1, right? Why are you going back to rescue her? She's dead. So I guess that wasn't really Jennifer after all. And didn't the house burn down at the end? Is this the mansion from The Shining? And Dr. West, the scientist who I guess is to blame for all this, is never mentioned. Now we have this new guy, Dr. Mueller. And we actually see him in the game. Ha! Fucker. But at least Namco realized the potential this game had, so I give them marks for trying to give the game a decent narrative. One thing I don't think anyone can argue is that Splatterhouse 2 had the best music. So big up to Milky Echo? Milky? Well, whatever the name, they did a fantastic job making Part 2 tense and spooky. The music complements the visuals very well and gives the game a nice, creepy atmosphere. Splatterhouse 2 has got a specific kind of difficulty that you rarely see in games, even today. If you've played Contra Shattered Soldier or Super Ghouls and Ghosts, then you know what I'm talking about. If you know where to stand, what to hit, and when to hit it, you can tear through this game without ever getting touched. In other words, it's the kind of game that's easy when you know how. In my prime, I could go through Part 2 on the hardest difficulty level, rarely if ever getting hit. So don't give me no crap about this game being too hard. You'll get no sympathy from me. And you know, the fact that this game even exists is pretty amazing. You would have never seen anything this graphic on a Nintendo console back in the 90s. In fact, really graphic games as a whole weren't seen much back then. Part 2 was one of the few, if not the only Genesis game to have a warning on the box before the rating system was implemented. And I don't know about you, but that just made me want to play the game more. So when Splatterhouse 2 ends, Rick saves Jennifer and everything's just cherry. With all this behind them, Rick and Jennifer get married, buy a house, have a son, and live happily ever after.
Help, Rick!
Part 2 is pretty much just an advancement over the ideas set in Part 1, but Part 3 was a complete reinvention of the series from the ground up. And that's why... Wait, what's going on? Oh, making fun of him too? No. Yeah. Oh, okay. So Splatterhouse 3 was the most different of the bunch, and it had its strengths and weaknesses. First, its strengths. Gone is that old one-plane, two-dimensional approach. Part 3 has more in common with Final Fight and Streets of Rage than it does with the first two, and this is a smart move, because I don't think Namco could have outdone themselves. I mean, as far as that type of game goes, Part 2 is about as good as it gets. Part 3 also introduces a completely non-linear level design. Every level has a destination, but how you get there is all up to you. This was a nice, refreshing change of pace, and a unique spin on the 2D brawlers. But you still must choose your path wisely. In each level you have a timer, and if you take too long, terrible things will happen. I mean, you could ignore the timer and just explore, but honestly, there isn't much to see. And besides, that's a one-way ticket to the worst ending. That's right, Splatterhouse 3 had multiple endings, which means it had story. Tons of story. Each chapter had a new reason to race against the clock, and with 4 different endings, Splatterhouse was finally given the story it deserved. And some extra replay value too. And the way they achieved this was so simple. Rick must hurry through the levels before his wife is eaten or his son is sacrificed in some godless ritual. It's a genius way to establish your motive, and it makes this the most nerve-wracking of the bunch. Fuck no! Fucking get up, hurry, come on! But Splatterhouse 3 had a few balancing issues that I felt really held the game back. And because of this, I have to say that Part 3 is my least favorite of the bunch. The combat system is really shallow, and the game is just too unforgiving at times. It almost punishes you for trying to get good at the combo system and encourages you to just be cheap. Later in the game, enemies become way too strong and can kill you in 2 hits, so you have to resort to special moves to make it in time. I mean, the spinning kick is a difficult move to do, and it takes some practice to be able to pull it off consistently, but once you've got that down, the game becomes kind of boring. And there was a serious lack of weapons in this game. I mean, there are weapons, but if you get hit, they get taken away. What the fuck? This just adds to the frustration because you need weapons to beat some of the levels and bosses in time. This game had a ton of great ideas, but the combat system just completely botched the game for me. But stepping outside the Splatterhouse universe, Part 3 is a great game among the 2D brawlers. I mean, I don't think any of them were as non-linear, story-driven, or gory as this one. So as a brawler fan, I highly recommend it. But as a Splatterhouse fan, I think you can do better. But that's just how I feel. My research tells me that I'm actually in the minority on this, as Part 3 is widely considered to be the best one of the bunch. So, whatever. To each their own. So there you go, my retrospective on the 3-part Splatterhouse series. But before we go, I still have a few fanboy things I want to talk about, starting with, God, how cool would a remake be? You know what I gotta say, one thing about these games is despite all its graphic content, you never kill humans or people. All you ever do in these games is kill demons and ghouls and zombies and the like. I mean, parents groups and politicians would really have nothing to complain about. I mean, I can see what's wrong with killing a human with a chainsaw, but what's so bad about killing a ghoul with a chainsaw? I mean, the only other human beings in these games are the people you're trying to save. That's wholesome family values right there. I mean, Rick could have been like, fuck you people, you're on your own. I ain't going in there. But instead, he rolls up his sleeves, picks up a 2x4, and does what any good boyfriend or husband or father should do. See? Family values. God, how cool would a remake be? And the reason why I bring up this idea of a remake is because I know Namco hasn't forgot about Splatterhouse. Over the years, they've made little references to our favorite little game. The most recent is this song in the soundtrack of Katamari Damacy. It's actually a reworking of the ending theme from the first one. Come on, Namco, quit screwing with us. I know there aren't many of us, but some of us have been waiting for over a decade for more Splatterhouse. Please, Namco, either remake the game or just stop teasing us. Well, if I haven't convinced you yet, these are games you need to try. I don't know what else to say. If you like a little violence and gore sometimes, I cannot recommend the Splatterhouse games enough. And with that, I guess we come to the end. I want to wish everyone a safe and happy Halloween. This is the Happy Nerd saying, go have fun. Cheers.